My name is Emily Carter, and I was 26 years old when I learned that the person who tried the hardest to destroy my wedding was my own mother. For most of my life, I imagined my wedding day as the happiest chapter of my story. The moment where everything I had dreamed about since I was a little girl would finally come together. The white dress, the music, the laughter of family and friends, and the quiet moment when I would look into the eyes of the man I loved and promised to spend the rest of my life beside him. I thought that moment would feel perfect, but 1 week before my wedding, my entire world collapsed in a way I never could have imagined. And the worst part was, I didn't even know it had already happened. On the surface, everything looked normal. I was living inside that dreamy bubble every bride knows too well. The one filled with color palettes, seating charts, dress fittings, and endless phone calls about flowers and table arrangements. My fiancé, Daniel Brooks, and I had been planning our wedding for almost a year. 200 guests were invited. Family from different states had already booked flights. Hotel rooms were reserved. Everything was finally coming together. The venue was a beautiful garden estate just outside the city. Tall white arches lined the ceremony path, and rows of cherry blossom trees would be in full bloom the week of our wedding. The florist had promised soft pink arrangements that would match the blossoms perfectly. The caterer had created a menu based on dishes my father used to love before he passed away years ago. Every small detail felt personal. Every detail felt like a piece of my heart, and my mother had been involved in everything from the very beginning. At the time, I thought it was sweet. She told everyone proudly that she wanted to help make sure her only daughter had the most beautiful wedding possible. She volunteered to make phone calls, handle vendor payments, confirm bookings, and organize schedules. Looking back now, that was exactly how she gained control over everything. About 10 days before the wedding, strange little things started happening. At first, they were small enough to ignore. My florist stopped replying to my messages. The catering manager suddenly said he needed to confirm something later. When I called the venue coordinator, her voice sounded hesitant, like she was trying to avoid saying something directly. But weddings are chaotic by nature. Vendors get busy, people forget to reply, mistakes happen, so I told myself not to overthink it. Daniel told me the same thing. "Wedding season is crazy," he said gently. "Everyone's overwhelmed, don't stress." I wanted to believe him, but 3 days later, everything changed. I was sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by guest lists and seating charts when my maid of honor, Jessica Miller, walked into the apartment looking pale. She didn't even say hello. She just stood there holding her laptop with both hands. "Emily," she said quietly, "I think something is really wrong." The moment she said those words, a cold knot formed in my stomach. She slowly turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was an email conversation between the venue coordinator and someone using my mother's name. At first, I didn't understand what I was reading. Then I saw the sentence, "The wedding has been canceled by the bride's family. All services are no longer required." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous it didn't feel real. "My mom wouldn't do that," I said immediately, but Jessica kept scrolling. Another email appeared. The florist confirming cancellation. Another, the catering company acknowledging termination of contract. Every message ended with the same polite line, "As requested by the bride's mother." My hands started shaking. My heart felt like it had dropped straight through the floor. I grabbed my phone and called my mother. She answered almost immediately. Her voice sounded calm. Almost cheerful, I didn't waste time. "Mom," I asked, "did you cancel my wedding vendors?" There was a pause, a long pause, the kind of silence that feels heavier than words. Then she sighed and said something that would stay burned into my memory forever. "Yes," she said, "I did." My chest tightened. "Why?" I whispered. Her answer was even worse. "I'm saving you from ruining your future." For a moment, I couldn't even process what she meant. Then she said something that made my entire body go numb. "I spoke to Daniel," she continued calmly. "And I told him the truth." "What truth?" "That my daughter is damaged goods," she said coldly, and he's making the biggest mistake of his life. The words hit me like a physical blow, my own mother. Saying that about me, I couldn't even breathe. I asked her why she would say something so cruel, but she didn't explain. She just repeated the same sentence again and again. I'm protecting you from a mistake. I hung up the phone feeling like my brain had stopped working. The next morning, I called every vendor myself. One by one, they confirmed the same thing. The wedding had been canceled almost a week earlier. Deposits were gone. Bookings were released. My carefully planned wedding had disappeared through a series of quiet phone calls my own mother had made behind my back. All I could imagine was the disaster waiting for us. 200 guests arriving on our wedding day, walking into an empty venue, whispers spreading through the crowd, questions, embarrassment, humiliation. That night Daniel came over after work. I expected him to look uncertain after what my mother had told him. Instead, he walked straight into the apartment, sat beside me on the floor, and wrapped his arms around me. I asked him what she had said. He looked uncomfortable but honest. She told me things from your past, he said quietly. Personal things, twisted them into something ugly. My chest tightened. What did you say? He smiled softly. I told her I'm marrying you because I love you, not because I expect perfection. For the first time that entire day, I cried. But love alone couldn't magically restore a destroyed wedding. Everything felt ruined. I told him maybe we should postpone everything. That's when Jessica cleared her throat from the corner of the room. She had been quiet the entire evening, watching, thinking. Then she said something that made absolutely no sense at the time. Actually, she said slowly, this might not be a disaster. Daniel and I both looked at her in confusion. She closed her laptop and folded her arms. I've been preparing for this for 6 months, I blinked. Preparing for what? She took a deep breath. For the possibility that your mother would try something exactly like this. Jessica explained that months earlier, she had noticed something strange during the early wedding planning. My mother's behavior, the way she tried to control vendors, the way she insisted on managing payments, the way she pushed herself into every conversation, something about it made Jessica uneasy. So without telling anyone, not even me, she started building a backup plan. She had quietly booked a small private vineyard outside the city under her own name. It wasn't huge. It wasn't the grand garden estate we had chosen, but it was beautiful, intimate, peaceful. Rows of grapevines stretched across golden hills, and at sunset the entire place glowed with warm light. She had also stayed in contact with a second catering company that happened to have that weekend free. A photographer friend owed her a favor. Decorations could be replaced with simple lights and flowers from a local supplier. I stared at her in disbelief. Why would you do all that? I asked. She shrugged. Because sometimes, she said gently, love means preparing for the worst, even when you hope it never happens. For the next 2 days, we worked nonstop. Phone calls, messages. New location details sent quietly to guests. Daniel's family jumped in to help. My cousins volunteered to decorate the vineyard themselves. String lights were hung between the vines. Wooden tables were covered with soft white cloth. Slowly, piece by piece, a new wedding was being rebuilt. Meanwhile, my mother believed she had already destroyed everything. Finally, the wedding day arrived. The original venue stayed exactly as it was. Silent, empty. But across town, the vineyard glowed with music, laughter, and warm golden lights. Guests arrived smiling. 200 people, not to a disaster, but to something even more magical than the original plan. Then something happened none of us expected. My mother showed up. Apparently, a relative had told her the wedding was still happening somewhere. She walked into the vineyard confidently, probably expecting chaos. Instead, she stepped into a celebration. Music, lights, people laughing, and Daniel and I standing beneath a wooden arch surrounded by flowers. I will never forget the expression on her face. Shock, confusion, silence. She had spent an entire week destroying my wedding behind my back, but instead of stopping it, she had walked straight into a celebration she had no control over, and couldn't stop. The ceremony began, our vows were spoken, guests applauded, and for the first time in my life, my mother stood completely powerless. After the ceremony, she approached me slowly. Her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "You think you won?" she asked. I looked at her calmly. "No," I said gently. "This was never a competition." I gestured toward the people around us. "This is what love looks like. The people who help you rebuild when someone else tries to tear everything down." She didn't reply. She simply turned and walked away. That night, under glowing vineyard lights, Daniel and I shared our first dance as husband and wife. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Family isn't defined by who tries to control your life. Family is defined by the people who stand beside you when everything falls apart and help you build something even stronger. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes that love and loyalty always win in the end.